Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. Still going over the remaining starts and sits for Week 6, so I'll cover the final 7 games of the week, go over every single player that should be relatively fantasy relevant, and just sort of give you guys a general understanding of what I expect to happen in that game, how I expect those players to perform, and then hopefully give you guys a good understanding of whether or not I think they should be in your fantasy lineups. If there are any players I don't talk about in this video, it's likely because they were touched on in part 1 of this video, so I highly recommend that you guys go watch that one as well. As always, if you guys do have any specific start-sit questions, just let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to help you out there. A lot of fun interacting with you guys there. I love helping you guys make those decisions because it helps me make decisions of my own as well. So we had a good Thursday night football game. We saw the Seahawks lose to the San Francisco 49ers. Got a high-scoring game, though, so that was great. Big takeaways from that game. DK Metcalf, not a great fantasy outing, but was just peppered with targets, had a long touchdown called back. I'm not worried about him at all. I still think he's like a low-end wide receiver 1 to a high-end wide receiver 2 the rest of the season. Kenneth Walker kept getting it done. We saw George Kittle have a monster game. We saw Deebo Samuel get it done. Ayuk sort of fell back down to earth a little bit. Just going to be tough for those guys to each all have really great weeks. 2 of them a week probably will. It's just going to leave one out every single week. And then Jordan Mason left the game with a shoulder injury. We'll see what happens. Isaac Guerrero looked really great in his stead. It's just a really great system for running backs. So if Jordan Mason's going to miss time, Guerrero is going to be an extremely popular waiver ad going into next week. But yeah, other than that, let's get into the first game here. Starting things off here, we've got the Browns at the Eagles. Honestly, how many points are the Eagles going to win by in this one? I believe they've got a line of minus 9.5 right now. That is the largest spread of the week to my knowledge. Should be just a pretty easy win here for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think you should absolutely be starting their defense. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and the Browns get pretty much smoked by everybody so far. Amari Cooper is the only Brown that I would really want to start here. It's a really great matchup against this Eagles secondary. He is 4th in the NFL in targets, believe it or not. So, obviously the targets are not coming from a reliable arm there, but I think he's in line for plenty of opportunities here. This Eagles secondary has been suspect, so I do want to play Amari Cooper in this one. Jerome Ford, low-end running back play. Deonta Foreman's been missing some practice this week, so you could see Jerome Ford sort of thrust back into a workhorse role for one more week here. I think you can play him. You're hoping he catches some passes, maybe gets lucky and finds the end zone, but there's not a lot of upside there with that play, but definitely could do worse. For the Eagles, we're right back starting our usuals. We're going to get A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back, so you're starting those guys for sure. Jalen Hurts, obviously a must-start here. I know the Browns' defense hasn't been bad against opposing passers, but Hurts with those weapons back, so no way you're sitting him. And then Saquon, same thing. Got to be in your lineup there. And then Dallas Goedert probably makes your lineup as well. Just like he's been great so far this season, obviously mostly without A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. So I don't think you'll see him put up the kind of numbers he was prior to those guys coming back, but I still think he's a talented player. Tight end sucks so far this year, so I still think he's probably a top 12 option. On this side of the ball, I didn't talk about him, but David Njoku might play this week, but I just don't think I want to play him yet. I need to see him come back and be healthy and finish the game before I trust him at this point. Next up here, we've got the Chargers at the Broncos. Going to be another gross one, probably. Pretty much every Broncos game seems like it's set up to be not a very fun or high-scoring game. Then you get the Chargers, who are one of the slowest pace of play, highest run volume offenses in the NFL. Not expecting a lot of points or volume in this game. For the Chargers, J.K. Dobbins is probably the only player that I want to play, and even he's a low-end running back play. Be interesting to see what they do after the bye. Really, Gus Edwards was not getting a lot done for them, so I think it would make at least some level of sense to shift even more over to J.K. Dobbins. Tough to do because obviously they want to keep him healthy, but Gus Edwards does not look at the solution, so it'll just be interesting to see how that backfield split plays out this week. Denver, they've been an elite on defense. I don't really trust anybody else for the Chargers. I think if you have to play a receiver, it would be Ladd McConkey. We could see Patrick Surtain. I mean, he's not going to go into the slot against Ladd McConkey very often, so he'll be looking at Surtain versus Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer. Should open up things at least a little bit for Ladd McConkey, so if you have to go there, you can. But again, I mean, like, it's just not a great setup there. We did see Jacoby Myers put up a decent game, sort of in a blowout last week, so there's a potential avenue there, but I don't think the Chargers are going to get blown out by Denver here. For Denver, Javonte, he's a low-end running back 2 play here. We've seen him be a little bit better the last couple of weeks, so I don't think there's any reason to completely write him off. I think he's a perfectly viable low-end running back 2 option, just not a guy that I'm excited to play. For the receivers there in Denver, Courtland Sutton, a desperation play at running back. He's been getting a lot of volume, but it hasn't really turned into a ton of fantasy production. There's not a lot of fantasy production to go around anyway between all these wide receivers here, so it's a tough choice there. I think he's like a flex play. If you're missing a player or two, need to put him in your lineup, you could do a lot worse, but you probably do need a touchdown out of him for him to pay off. And then Bo Nix, I just want to keep an eye on him. He's starting to look better and better each week. He actually offers a decent floor on the ground as well. People don't really give him the credit he deserves for how mobile he is. So he's interesting long-term. Not a great play this week, so I think it's going to be a low-scoring, slow pace of play game. But Bo Nix is a guy that I would at least keep an eye on. It's like a potential streaming option later on in the season. Next up, we've got the Steelers at the Raiders. Honestly, going to be interesting to see which quarterback gets the nod for Pittsburgh here. I still kind of lean like it's going to be Justin Fields in this one. They haven't made a formal announcement. Russ has practiced in full in both Wednesday and Thursday's practices, so we'll see what happens there. I think Russ will be active at a minimum. Makes him he'll be the backup quarterback if Justin Fields ends up starting. It makes me more scared about playing Justin Fields because I think there's a very real opportunity in that world where Justin Fields throws a pick early on or something, and then he just gets pulled. So playing Justin Fields as a streaming option is extremely high risk right now, just because there is a very real chance of him getting pulled mid-game, assuming Russ is active. So I don't really want to go there. Najee Harris, a low-end RB2. I don't think we'll have Jalen Warren or Cordarrelle Patterson again. So, he'll have a lot of volume. You're hoping he scores a touchdown. He hasn't done that yet this season, so that's obviously why he's been disappointing. But I do expect some level of regression there. I believe he leads the NFL right now in terms of touches without a touchdown. So that should happen at some point. I wouldn't completely panic about him, but, he's just going to be like a mid-tier RB2 most of the season. You'll need a touchdown out of him to be happy. Without it, he'll give you 8 fantasy points, which is fine, but not great. George Pickens, he's a scary play. I think I want to play him as like a high-end flex play here. Obviously, really boomer bust, but the Raiders' defense, especially through the air, doesn't scare me. And George Pickens is a really talented player. He's clearly going through some off-the-field stuff. He's reportedly shown up late to practice several times. They kind of benched him effectively last week. We saw more snaps from both Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson than George Pickens last week. So I don't love that, but the upside's there in this matchup. I think you can play him, but just understand again, it's another player where the floor is near 0. And then Pat Freiermuth, probably a low-end tight end 1. You're playing him because he's going to get 4 catches-ish, maybe score a touchdown. But, it's like a Zach Ertz level play. We're going to get some points, but there's not really a ceiling there. For the Raiders, Brock Bowers, definitely a must-start. You're playing him for sure. Don't really want to play anyone else there. Like, you've got Alexander Mattison and Zamir White getting involved. I don't know if Zamir White's even going to play in this one. If he does, it's even messier. And if he doesn't, you're looking at like a mix of Madison and Amir Abdullah versus the Steelers defense. Don't really want to go there. For the receivers, Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers are both like low-end flex options. I'd play Pickens over both of them, but I know there are a lot of us that really desperately need a flex. You could do worse than those guys. I think I prefer Myers to Tucker this week just because seems like the more reliable option, but if you need some ceiling, I guess Trey Tucker does have a little bit more upside there. Next up, we've got the Falcons at the Panthers, and this one really should be a fun game here. For the Falcons, Kirk Cousins, he's a great streaming option here. The Panthers defense is one of, if not the worst in the NFL. The only real risk with playing Kirk is that they get up 21-0 in their first quarter and they just lean on Bijan and Algier, and then you don't need to see Kirk Cousins perform a lot. But, if they're going to get up 21-0, it's probably because Kirk Cousins did quite a bit. So I think Kirk Cousins is a really great streaming option. Darnell Mooney, Drake London, they're going to be in. I really do think this is going to be a get-right game for Bijan. I know he's been limited this week. He was limited in Thursday's practice with that hamstring injury, so I still don't think we'll see the full 85% snap share that we saw weeks 1 through 3. It'll probably be closer to like that 70-75% snap share, so maybe a little bit closer to that than we've been the last 2 weeks. But he's going to be hyper efficient against this Panthers defense. I fully expect him to put up a long run at some point, probably catch a few passes. Bijan could easily be the RB1 this week. And then Tyler Algier, a deep league option at running back if you need it. There's going to be points to be had for the Falcons in this game. I think there might be room for 2 running backs to put up a lot of points. I think about what DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson did last week. I kind of view Bijan as a better version of DeAndre Swift, and then I view Algier as a better version of Roschon Johnson. So both those guys were really great last week. There's definitely an environment that could happen here where both those guys, Bijan and Algier, end up being really good. Kyle Pitts also probably in your lineups too. I don't love it. He needed 500 passing yards out of Kirk Cousins last week to have his first 12-point game this season, but you could do worse, so you could probably play him if you need to. For the Panthers, Deontay Johnson, Chuba Hubbard probably should be in lineups. I know Deontay had a rough week last week, but it was against the Bears secondary. Honestly, might be the best secondary in the NFL, so I just want to I want to rub that one off. I'm not really super worried about that. The Bears are just going to be a really brutal matchup for everybody. I think Deontay's right back to being like a solid wide receiver 2 for us this week. And then Xavier Legette, desperation flex play here. I think he's healthy, he'll be back, so I think he should be okay. But you're hoping that the Panthers play better on offense than they did last week. I just think the Bears defense is a different animal than this Falcons defense. So I think Legette's a solid flex option, but hopefully you've got better plays. But I do think you could start Legette if you needed to this week. Next, we've got what should be a really fun game between the Lions and the Cowboys. The Lions coming off their byes, they should be well rested, ready to be put up a lot of points against this Cowboys team. Honestly, it's a chance to be the game of the week here. We're starting all of our Lions: David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Laporta, and Jameson Williams. Great plays. I can't imagine benching any of those guys except for maybe Jameson Williams if your team is stacked. But again, it's a great game environment for him. I think there's a lot of upside there. Jared Goff, really solid streaming play as well. I think he's going to be set up to probably throw for 250 and 2 at a minimum, and there's obviously upside beyond that. For the Cowboys, not really excited about playing Rico Dowdle. Like, he did clearly emerge as the lead back in this offense, but this run defense for Detroit is absolutely fantastic. You're probably going to need some high volume receiving usage out of Dowdle for him to put up a big game. Maybe he has a 1 yard rushing touchdown that salvages things a bit as well. So you can play him. He's like a lower term RB2. Just this week, though, I do actually really like the long term outlook of Dowdle. So I'm not worried about that, but just like don't panic when this game that kind of results in a less than stellar game for him because it's just not a good matchup. We can't really expect anybody to go off against this Lions run D unless you're Kenneth Walker, I guess, in week 4. Beyond that, though, for the Cowboys, Dak, CD, and Ferguson, all three of those guys need to be in lineups here. This should be a super high-scoring game. That's effectively the entire offense right there. And then Jalen Tolbert, a solid flex play here. Again, another environment where we expect a lot of points. Tolbert kind of established himself as the clear wide receiver 2 in this offense without Brandon Cooks there. I think Jalen Tolbert's a guy we can start if we want to. Next, we've got the Sunday Night Football game here between the Bengals and the Giants. Let's start all our Bengals in this one. Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, all of them are really great plays. Not really trying to play any of the tight ends in this one. It's just kind of too split between Eric All and Mike Gesicki for me to trust either one of them. Note that in this, I'm assuming that Chase Brown is active and that Zach Moss is not. Chase Brown was limited in practice on Thursday, so don't get too carried away with that. I think they might just be sort of preserving him a little bit just because I think he's in line for a huge role this week because I don't expect Zach Moss to suit up. If Zach Moss does play, it kind of limits the upside for both those guys. I still think you can play them, and Chase would be the one that I want to play. But so I really don't want to play Zach Moss regardless. But Chase gets a huge bump, or Chase Brown gets a huge bump if Zach Moss misses. For the Giants, I said Neighbors should be back here, but it sounds more and more like he's actually sort of trending towards not being active for this game. If he is active, you're playing him for sure. But if he's not, makes Wan'Dale Robinson a really solid flex play. Darius Slayton, a decent deep league dart throw as well. You know, he was really good last week against Seattle. I think after what we saw this week, it might just be clear that Seattle's defense is not good at all. But we'll see what happens there. For the running back situation, Devin Singletary might return, which kind of makes me want to sit all the running backs in New York because I don't really know how that backfield's going to shake out. But if Singletary's inactive again, I really think we can play Tyrone Tracy. I think he's a really solid option, a guy that might just be like a top 15 play this week if Devin Singletary misses. So I would try to get Tracy in my lineup if Singletary is inactive this week. And for the final game of the week here, we've got the Bills at the Jets. Not really sure if things are going to improve for Buffalo in this game. The Jets have, in theory, a really elite defense. Obviously, a lot of things shook up for the Jets this last week. We saw them fire their head coach in Robert Saleh. They demoted Nathaniel Hackett. Still have a new offensive play caller this week. Lots of things moving around in New York there. So it's interesting to see what the Jets look like on offense. I really don't know what to expect there. Can't really get any worse. I'm expecting things to improve at least a little bit, but I wouldn't expect a ton of upside there. For the Bills, Josh Allen, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid all need to be in lineups here. I know Kincaid and Allen have been disappointing the last few weeks, but you just don't have better options than them. Allen should still be a stud. I can't imagine benching him unless you've got him and Jaden Daniels or something. And then Dalton Kincaid, I'd be shocked if you have a better option. The tight end position is so weak that we just kind of had to play guys that are that involved. James Cook, keep an eye on him. He hasn't practiced yet this week, so it is a little bit concerning. Good that we have the extra day there, but he could be dealing with a toe injury that might keep him out this week. If he happens to miss between Ty Johnson and Ray Davis, I don't really know which one I want to play. I think Ty Johnson's obviously in line for more receiving work. Ray Davis has a better shot to score a touchdown, so in full PPR, I think I lean Ty Johnson in half and non. Maybe it's Ray Davis, but really risky play either way. They're both low-end plays that I would kind of just prefer to not play either one of. If you have to play a Bills wide receiver, I think it would be Khalil Shakir because he just seemed really important to the offense, especially with how they looked last week without him. But I don't really want to go there this week. This Jets pass defense is really great. I don't really trust anything there. So I think it's going to be Allen, Cook, and Kincaid and nobody else. And if Cook is inactive, it's probably just Allen and Kincaid. For the Jets, I think this should be a get-right week for Breece Hall. The Bills have so far the worst run defense in the NFL in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. It's the matchup you want if you're a Breece Hall manager, so keep that in mind. You're playing him this week. Hopefully things get right. If they don't, then it's time to be definitely concerned because there's not going to be any further coaching changes or anything that are going to help things. So this is kind of the week that we need to see Breece get right. Garrett Wilson, he's a wide receiver 2 option. You can play him you're probably playing him for sure, but I wouldn't go to the guys like Mike Williams and Allen Lazard. The Bills' pass defense has actually been pretty solid so far this season. And, I don't expect this to be a super high-scoring game. Should be a pretty slow pace of play. I think the Jets will try and lean on their run game. I don't think there'll be enough volume to go around to support guys like Lazard and Mike Williams. However, Tyler Conklin, a decent streaming option here. He just seems involved enough in the offense. It's going to get you some points, and getting that out of the tight end position, it's tough to really be too upset about that. So that'll do it for the starts and sits in week 6. Up next, I'll be going over last minute starts and sits, last minute injury updates on Sunday morning live, 1 hour before the morning games kick off. So at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Stay tuned for that live stream. Hopefully I can see you guys there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get a notification when I go live and you can hop in, ask your questions. I'll do my best to get you all set to win yourself your matchup in week 6. Other than that, there's going to keep being content every single week, like 5-6 videos a week every single week. So just make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll be here all season long to help you guys win your leagues. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get notifications when new videos come out. And then if you made it this far in the video, give it a thumbs up. It just really helps me out. Other than that, any questions, comments, or anything like that, let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to give you guys my feedback on that. And good luck this week. I'll catch you guys Sunday morning. Peace, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.